Okay, we are live in Evansville, Indiana, following our first screening of gather screening of Vaxxed, and I am here talking with Carmen, who is a friend, Carmen Waggler, who is a friend, a longtime friend that I've just met personally for the first time. And I've asked Carmen if she would share her story with us. So I'm going to turn the camera around now and introduce you to my friend Carmen. Okay, and Carmen, you're again a little bit backlit, so
okay.
Here we go. All right, so Carmen, I would like you to tell the people watching about your education. So tell us about your education.
Okay. I have a bachelor's in nursing that I received here at Evansville.
Okay.
And I am a former public health nurse. I've had several roles. I subbed as school nurse. I have worked in several different areas of nursing, and public health was one area that I did work.
Okay, so you were a public health nurse and a school nurse, and and you have a bachelor's in nursing. Okay. And you were telling me about, we were talking about what you learned as a nurse in your education about vaccines. Can you tell me about what you learned?
Yeah, we do not have a separate class to study vaccines or the vaccine program. So it's just a part of our curriculum, and it's very short. We do not learn of the ingredients in vaccines.
So you weren't taught about the ingredients? Okay.
No, we were not. But to be fair, we really weren't taught about the ingredients of any of the pharmaceutical drugs that we give. We just are taught how to give them, maybe taught about some side effects or adverse effects and that kind of thing. With vaccines, I do not remember ever being told anything other than a sore leg, redness, possible fever. Seizures would be extremely rare. Any type of adverse reaction that would be severe would be extremely, extremely rare.
Okay.
But that they had to put that on there.
Right. Okay. So, were you taught about the ingredients? Did you mention?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you
I had no idea really what was in a vaccine. Even when I worked at the public health department, the manufacturer's inserts are in every single vaccine that I opened. But I honestly never even felt compelled to look at what the ingredients were.
Okay,
I just never even thought about it.
Did you ever read a vaccine manufacturer's insert when you were working as a public health nurse?
I did read the adverse reactions. I had an idea about those while I was working, and side effects and how to store them, because you do have to properly store. Several of them have to be at a certain temperature. So I did do that. I never felt compelled to actually look through the ingredients and to look up each ingredient and to understand exactly what it was.
Okay. So tell me about why you're here tonight. I mean, you drove quite a ways to come see Vaxxed in Evansville, because you don't live here locally in Evansville, and I appreciate you coming. So why was this important to you? Is this a personal or a professional reason?
Both. It's actually both. In 1996, I was blessed with my third child, and I worked at the health department at that time as the public health nurse. I gave him his first MMR after he turned a year old.
Okay, so you injected your son.
I did. I actually gave it to him. I had the secretary hold him while I gave it. I thought it was important. We had a kiddo come through our office that had a rash, and our public health officer at the time considered it could be measles, and that concerned me, and he was a little bit delayed on it, and I got him and brought him in and gave it.
So, and what happened?
Soon thereafter, he lost his speech, and he wasn't saying the words that he could say. Even if we would say them, he was barely parroting anything that we were saying. He began to flap his arms, to hold them up in odd angles, and to hum. And he developed rashes. He had some seizures. He developed the worst diarrhea I'd ever seen. It was frothy, it was full of undigested food, it was mucousy, bloody, and he had these several times a day. He just looked sickly. I knew that he was medically fragile.
So did you put it together with the vaccine at that time? Did you know that it was the vaccine?
Well, I began to look through his medical history, because he had some other conditions as well, some comorbid conditions. So I began to look through to try to figure out what happened. My mother actually prompted me by just, it happens over a period of time that you can't quite, I couldn't quite put it together. And my mom said he was not like this. Why is he humming like this? So I pulled his medical records, pulled videos. We videotaped him all the time. We had a lot of pictures. And I began to look at the timeline, and I realized that I had given him that measles, mumps, rubella. So that is the first time I began to research that vaccine.
And
I researched it because it was important to me to know that I didn't do anything to cause this to my son. I wanted to look at the studies that back this vaccine, that it couldn't cause such a damage to a brain to cause this to happen to my son. That's why I looked into it. I felt convinced that it couldn't when I began to look. And then as I began to study this vaccine, I realized what the ingredients were. I had no idea that aborted children were used to make the MMR. I had never heard that before. I did not know that. And as I looked for the research, the long-term safety data of using this vaccine in the never vaccinated, I was looking for those gold standard studies to show that this could not have done this. And he turned 20 yesterday, and I still haven't found those studies.
Oh, wow. So, and how is he now?
He's severely brain injured. He requires 24-hour-a-day care.
Wow.
He still cannot speak. The only thing he can say is no.
So how has this affected your family, and how did it affect your career as a nurse?
I quit working when he was about 5. I used to even sub at the school as school nurse, just trying to keep a job, to maintain. I wanted to maintain insurance. It was very expensive. He became medically fragile. I actually dropped out of my career and stayed home all these years. I just returned about 14 months ago, and I'm now working in an emergency room.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and for sharing your story, and I just can't even imagine. And I'm so glad and thankful that I finally got to meet you in person, because we've been friends for a long time, and I appreciate you taking the time out and coming all this way and talking to everyone and sharing your story. And I know that others will be interested to hear, and I'll send you just lots of love and blessings, and we appreciate you. And Carmen, she didn't mention this, but Carmen is one of, or the founding member of the Indiana Indiana Coalition for Vaccine Choice, and you can find that on Facebook. And we are going to work hard and try to protect our rights. We are going to protect our rights here in Indiana, and we're going to get everybody involved.
Informed consent is the most important. It's the backbone of medical ethics. It truly is, and that's one of the biggest things I've learned throughout this is informed consent. Citizens have to be informed of the risk, and to be able to make that consent or to refuse without any punishment, without any repercussions.
Well, thank you so much, Carmen, and thanks everybody for being with us.
Thanks for everything you're doing,
All right.
Marcy.
Thank you. All right, bye guys.